Well, it appears that we are right at 6:30, so I would like to call to order the third regular meeting of the Board of Directors of SAD 52, and if Crystal could lead us to the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first order of business will be to act on the minutes of September 2nd. Any errors or omissions noted on those? Seeing none, we accept those under general consent. That brings us to communications. Kim.
Thank you, Betsy. I would like to report the following resignations. Stuart Mason, Transportation Specialist, effective tomorrow. Lee Ellingwood, District-wide Sub-Bus Driver, Maintenance and Custodian, effective September 28th. And Michelle Higgins, Levitt Area High School Food Service Assistant, and that was effective on September 6th.
Thank you. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
We do. Please remove item 8.1.4, which is the Levitt Area High School Food Service Assistant.
Anything else for adjustments?
No other adjustments.
Thank you. That brings us to committee reports. Finance, Yuri.
We met this evening and reviewed the warrant article expenditures for May, June, and July. The only thing worth discussion for tonight is, or two things. One, you'll notice that at the end of the fiscal year for June 2021, we exceeded the the facilities budget, and the reason for that was we transferred some money from regular instruction that was left over from on-field positions to advance some payments on some outstanding projects, on some outstanding pickup trucks that the district has bought, as well as a front-end loader. So just trying to defer some of those, or get some of those prepaid ahead of time. The other thing worth mentioning that we discussed is we have a water issue at Turner Primary School, and currently the district is looking into whether we need to put in a buffer tank or drill another well. We have a shortage of water feeding that building, and they are in the process of getting some quotes to do that work. The committee was very interested because of the water issues we've had in Turner and throughout the buildings, trying to look at if we could figure out a way to get another well put in that building so that we didn't have any water issues in the future.
Thank you. PTV, Jessica.
We have not met.
Thank you. Curriculum policy, Joanne.
We did not meet. We rescheduled our meeting to next Tuesday, September 21st.
Thank you. Student representatives, we will, now that we have students again, we'll have one here at some point. Thank you. That brings us to 5.5, Administrator Report, Rebecca Drysdale.
All right, good evening. Okay. All right, good evening. My name is Rebecca Drysdale. As I was introduced, I'm the Director of Special Education here in the district.
Can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Is that better? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to start over. So good evening. My name is Rebecca Drysdale. I'm the Director of Special Education here in the district. I'm here this evening to provide you with information regarding special education. As we return to school, we're all very excited to see our students every day. We've learned that in the last year and a half that our students with individual plans make the most progress when they're provided with in-person instruction. At the beginning of each school year, we're in the process of collecting information for our October 1st child count. In the last several years, our numbers of students receiving special education services have varied. In 2017 and 2018, we provided services to 349 students. In 2018 and 19, we had 341 students. In 19 and 20, we had 398 students. And now here in 2021, we are estimating around 350 students. So we're averaging about 360 students in the last 3 years, between 18 and 20% of our total population, which is comparative to the most recent state average of 9.141. Sorry, that's 9.41. Today it was exciting. I wanted to share with you that we received a letter from Erin Frazier, who is the State Director of Special Education Services, thanking us for our participation in the Maine DOE Special Education Monitoring Program for the school year 2019-2020. Our school district has completed the process with no further actions needed, and I am to share her commendations with our dedicated staff. Although we were monitored during the 2019 school year, this in fact was a 3-year process for our staff, half of which occurred during the pandemic. The monitoring process started with a training for our case managers and service providers presented by the Maine DOE to support special education compliance standards in the year 2018 and 2019. We then completed a 2-prong audit process with the Maine DOE, where we were found to be, which I've reported in the past, 98% compliant in meeting the state standards for the 1920 school year. The Maine DOE requires 100% compliance. So we provided additional training to our staff and submitted corrections and samples demonstrating our full compliance in June of 2021. This process has been a tremendous amount of work for our department, along with a great learning experience in order to develop strong plans for our students. I want to send a huge, huge shout out to our case managers and service providers, thanking them for their willingness to learn and their ability to apply their new skills in developing student plans during one of the most challenging educational times in our history. Now, looking forward to this year, we're continuing to grow in our skills as professionals. We're working on a new IEP process and developing collaborative plans with our schools and families. We're collecting data on our student plans to drive our instruction and monitor our progress. And then we continue to develop strong student plans to meet the unique educational needs for our students, along with meeting our Maine DOE requirements. So those are really the kind of the big highlights and chunks for special education at that time. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Rebecca? Thank you for the update.
All right, thank you.
Do we have Greg as well? Excellent. Thank you.
Hello. I am the Transportation and Facilities Director at Academies, and I'm going to give you a brief summary of the beginning of school. So we just took delivery of 2 of our 3 new buses. We have all of our routes filled as of right now, but I am still experiencing a driver shortage. We're currently recruiting other drivers, and there's interviews in the processes. As well as the state is going to upgrade our TransFinder for no cost to the school district to the new software. That should be rolling out in October. I'm in the first round. Got in that pretty quickly, just talking with TransFinder representatives in the state. And the custodial department is doing pretty well as well. And we had a successful first day of school with all my departments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That brings us to the superintendent's report.
On September 2nd, the school board voted to return $300,000 of the unanticipated additional subsidy to our 3 towns for tax relief. This means at the end of this current school year, the district will send $100,020 to Green for their 33.34%. The district will send $54,090 to Leeds for their 18%, and $145,890 to Turner for their 48% for tax relief. It was an absolute pleasure to call Kurt Shaw of Turner, Joyce Pratt of Leeds, and Darlene Bollier of Green to tell them about the board vote on this. And they were all very happy about that and very appreciative. So update on pooled testing. We are moving forward toward the implementation of pooled testing because those who participate in pooled testing do not need to quarantine if and when they are identified as a close contact, as long as they are asymptomatic. Our goal is, of course, to keep students in school as much as possible this year. We know that the quarantine last year was disruptive, and participating in pooled testing can reduce the number of people who must quarantine because of being in close contact. We have the license to pursue pool testing. I applied for the Buy Next Now supplies, and that's the follow-up individual tests to the pool testing. And we have received a few of those supplies so far. Our lead nurse, Maria Jaffoon, is working with the Department of Education, which is the next step. It will be 2 or probably 3 weeks at least before we will have support to get pool testing up and running. We have been notified that there are some supply shortage issues as well. Parent permission is required for a student to participate in pool testing, and we will be sending that permission letter to families in the next couple of weeks so that we're ready when the state's ready to help us. I'd like to thank our nurses, Maria Jaffoon at TPS, Casey Smith at TES, Michelle Lenfest at the middle school, Krista Murray at the high school, Paula Aldrich at Green, and Christina Cloutier at Leeds for their continued work on close contact tracing and the support that they're offering to our families. I will be sending regular MSAD 52 updates to staff and families again this year as I did last year. The first one will be sent tomorrow afternoon, and it will include the updated chart from the standard operating procedures that shows when someone needs to quarantine. The Maine Department of Education standard operating procedures, which we are going by, which we must go by, are a bit more complicated this year, so my hope is that will add some clarity for everyone. Also, at every board meeting, I will be sharing conditions related to the pandemic. Of course, we are all hoping that conditions continue to improve or do improve. At this point, we still have a lot of new cases coming in. There were 658 confirmed cases Monday, I think. And the state is measuring levels of community transmission of the virus. And there are 4 categories: low, moderate, substantial, or high. Androscoggin County has a high community transmission rate at this time. Between 50 and 54% of our eligible students, that's students ages 12 to 18, are vaccinated. That is an increase. The last time I reported this, we were at 45 to 49%, so it is an increase. Vaccination rates for all eligible people of all ages who have had at least their first shot are Green at 75%, Turner at 75%, and Leeds at 66%. Again, this has increased since the last time I reported numbers. The Department of Health and Human Services is reporting staff vaccination rates in each school, and that includes all the employees who are in that school, such as the teachers, ed techs, administrative assistants, custodians, food service, and administrators. DHHS will be reporting this data each month. As of August 31st, the state average for school vaccination rates is 75.6%. That's the number of staff, the average number of staff vaccinated in schools. For us, Tripp Middle School is at 81.5%. Turner Elementary School is at 78.7%. Leavitt Area High School is at 69.8%. Turner Primary School is at 69.4%. Leeds Central School is at 60%. And Green Central School is at 57.1%. DHHS is also reporting vaccination rates for what they call central operations staff. That includes employees such as central office staff, bus drivers, van drivers, substitutes, and coaches. The state average of central operations staff vaccination rate as of August 31st is 68.83%. MSAD 52 central operations staff vaccination rate is 32.5%. DHHS will be updating this data monthly, and it's important to note that for our coaches and our substitutes in particular, we may not yet have all the information on those people, and if anybody we didn't have the information on gets reported as being unvaccinated. So there will likely be some changes next month when I report this to us. As far as in our schools themselves, at Green Central School, we have 18 students in quarantine and 2 positive students. At TPS, we have 1 student in quarantine and 1 positive student. At TES, 10 students in quarantine and 2 positive students. At the middle school, 1 student in quarantine, 0 positive at this time. And at the high school, 8 students in quarantine and 1 staff in quarantine. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Maine Department of Education, as well as the American Academy of Pediatrics, continue to recommend universal masking in schools, frequent hand washing and sanitizing, distancing, the daily health assessment and staying home when we're sick, and to implement the screening or pooled testing to reduce the transmission of COVID-19. There was a question at the last board meeting about the O2 Prime that we installed in all schools to improve air quality. And I'm going to ask our business manager, Dean Flanagan, to talk about that.
Very good. Thank you. And please say something if you can't hear me, because it's a little difficult sometimes. Yes, so the O2 Prime is a product by Siemens, and they're our facilities management company. They take care of a lot of our HVAC equipment, air handling equipment. And one of the questions that came up, I think at the last board meeting, was regarding the ozone. And this system does not have ozone. It doesn't produce it. Your systems that produce ozone are they're a UV based, and this does not use UV light. So how this works is it uses positive and negative ions, and those are forced through the HVAC system, through all of your air handling units. And as Superintendent Brandt said, we have it in every school. And what happens is the positive and negative ions, they react to form what they call hydroxyls. That's the standard definition that is put here. And what the hydroxyls do is they form they rob the pathogen of a hydrogen bond, and that removes the food source. So it's a pretty unique way that it's done. And then as those ions attach to the airborne particle, it causes that particle to attract other nearby particles. And that's important because then they're able to be caught in the filter. So that is in a nutshell how it works. And so with the filtration of the system, is we run about what they call a MERV 7 in the air systems as far as filters. And that's about middle of the road. It's not as thick as you can get. And one of the questions that I know comes up from time to time is whether we use a HEPA filter. And you don't need a HEPA filter with it, because those filters will catch anything that you have, whether it's a virus or one of the other pathogens. So that's how it becomes really effective and is able to treat the entire air system in the building. So I've thrown a lot of pieces out here in terms of how those work, but that's the essential part of what it does. And like I said, one of the characteristics that we have is it does not have the ozone producing piece to it. There are systems that do use UV light. This is not one of them. So it's very safe and it's very effective. So, take any questions?
Thank you for following up on that. It was very helpful.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm almost finished, Betsy. So I'd like to thank all of our school administrators for their work in the opening of school this year. It has been absolutely wonderful to have all students back. It has also been different than what we've had to do for the past couple of years. So it's been a lot of work and a lot of good work. And it's paying off in terms of learning and support for all of our students. I'd also like to tell everyone that our LCS therapy dog, Lucky Tim, he just goes by Lucky now, he will be on the mound with his trainer, Christy Gardner, as she throws out the first pitch at the Red Sox game tomorrow night. So he will actually be there. We're hoping to get some video clip of that and report back how that went. We do have all students back in school full-time this year, 5 days each week for learning, 5 days each week for social emotional support, and 5 days each week for them to be with their peers and connecting with their teachers. So again, a great start to the new year.
Thank you. And thank you for that update on one of the questions from our last meeting. It's much appreciated. So as we move into public comment, I would remind folks or bring to your attention, we have printed copies out front by where you came in, by the doors and by the sign-in sheets around our existing public policy and just kind of the ground rules. And I'll read through that for you just to refresh everyone, myself included, about what that looks like. And you'll forgive me, I hope, if my tongue gets tangled up occasionally here. And the print is small enough that this may take me a minute. The full policy is BEDH when you find that on our website. And the printed copies folks have with them this evening talk about the fact that board meetings are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the official business of the school system. Meetings of the board are open to the public. Although board meetings are not public forums, the board will provide appropriate opportunities for citizens and employees to express opinions and concerns related to the matters under consideration by the board within the guidelines set forth in board policy, as I said, BEDH. Please be aware of the following ground rules for our policy. During the time set aside for public participation, the chair, that would be me, will be responsible for recognizing all speakers who must identify themselves as they begin talking. The chair, again, that would be me, may limit the time allotted for comments on a particular topic as well as the time each individual may speak. At this point, the guideline on that will be 5 minutes, that no individual speaker would have more than 5 minutes talking time. In the event of a sizable audience, the chair may require persons interested in speaking to sign up so that they may be called on in a fair and efficient manner, which is exactly what we've utilized the podium and the sign-in sheets for at this point. All speakers are to address the chair and direct questions or comments to particular board members of the superintendent only with the approval of the chair. Requests for information or concerns that require further research may be referred to the superintendent to be addressed at a later time, as we did this evening. Speakers are not permitted to share gossip, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. A student's name is not permitted to be discussed other than by his or her own parent or guardian. In order to make efficient use of meeting time, the board asks speakers to avoid duplication or repetition of comments. The board requests that groups or organizations be represented by designated spokespersons. No complaints or allegations will be allowed in public concerning any person employed by the school system or against particular students. These matters will not be considered in a public meeting, but will be referred through established policies and procedures. The chair has the authority to stop any presentation that violates these guidelines or the privacy rights of others. Persons who disrupt the meeting may be asked to leave, and the chair may request law enforcement assistance as necessary to restore order. Thanks in advance for everyone's cooperation. We certainly appreciate folks attending the meetings and sharing their thoughts and concerns. So at this point, if we have folks who would like to comment, you may certainly use the microphone so everyone can hear you if you identify yourselves or.
We'll go first. Here. All right. So I'm going to pull this up here really quick. I'm probably going to refer back to the HVAC system and the update. Everything was there. And my printing on this phone is small as well, so bear with me for a minute. So, yes, UV light system does create ozone, and this is not a UV lighted system. There's actually a particular type of UV light system that produces the ozone. The other ones are very expensive. Large light bulbs are very expensive to change, and so too many of those in order to replicate any type of UV system. So historically, bipolar ionization has been used ahead of a filter placement in an HVAC system to improve the air quality and particulates from the airstream. It does this by using high voltage to apply a positive and a negative electric charge particulates in the airstream. By passing by, these particulates become attracted both to each other and to surfaces, making them form larger clumps that are easier to filter and more likely to settle onto surfaces. While this can have a mild impact on reducing airborne particulates, it has been shown that most pathogens settle in this manner, remaining living and potential worrisome. So the vast majority of ions produced by these devices have no direct bacterial effect whatsoever. More recently, one of the larger companies using this, I won't name the company, is claiming their bipolar ionization technology reduces a range of pathogens in the air. The lab testing displayed on their site, which is I can't pronounce it, conducted in a 160-foot test chamber with an 8-foot high ceiling. They show reductions based on 700 to 1,500% higher than what they said can be achieved in a real-world environment. They also plan on producing charged particulates in the supply of an HVAC system. They produce hydroxyl radicals, which can kill the virus and bacteria. They provide no evidence to support this claim, and it is known in the research community that we have found through testing that hydroxyl radicals are extremely difficult to measure. So in other words, we may be producing these hydroxyl residuals through this system that we're installing. The problem is that how long are these hydroxyl residuals lasting? I'm pretty sure, but by the time the hydroxyls are created and it passes through the air system, they have petered out and they have no effect on the dust that's collecting inside of the classrooms or the dust that's going back up into the intake. So you've got a situation here where you might have something that's working, but it's not working to affect the classrooms or the auditoriums or whatever it happens to be. Hydroxyls have to be tested in an environment to prove that it kills SARS-CoV-2 in a laboratory, not just by somebody's documentation. Any company that claims that they can kill SARS-CoV-2 with their literature, and it's not been proven with the Clean Air Act, and it's not been proven with the FDA, it is false, it is untrue, and somebody's been deceived. My questions to you last week are in warning of this. This is COVID theater, is basically what this is. And people are making very rash, thoughtfully helpful perceptions of what to do to correct this issue. None of us want to be living in COVID anymore. And that's what we're doing. And we can be potentially making it a worse environment if we're not careful about these decisions that we make. So I did write something down right here-ish. I set it down over here. Somebody else's documents up here. So the MSAD filter, is it effective? Yes, collecting dust. Does it do anything to eliminate viral or bacterial infections? Nothing at all. You can use MERV 7, 9, MERV 13, whatever style filter that you can get the best of the best MERV filter. There's no clinical trials. There's no testing that has been done to show that it'll do anything to capture and or will kill COVID-2 SARS or SARS-CoV-2. You have a timeline that it takes to kill SARS-CoV-2. Can it be done with hydroxyls? Yes, it can be. But we need to have the proof that it does it in this particular air system. The company's literature may have been very misleading to you. All of you, including the superintendent, have probably been bombarded with advertisements and marketing and this and that from many companies out there. My time?
Yep. We're at 5 minutes now.
Okay. So the other question that I asked last week is how many proposals do we get? Which ones can prove and claim that they've done that? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jimmy Childs from Leeds. I thank you for this time, but 5 minutes on things that are really important to all of us really isn't enough. I mean, when you're doing weeks and weeks of research, it would really be nice to be afforded maybe a couple more minutes, please. 335 kids under 18 died from COVID in probably a year and a half. That's sad, but that's over 3 million tested positive. So think of those numbers. 3 million positive tests, 335 dead. 2007 to 2009, 2 years, 317 kids died from H1N1. Very sad, but 317. 2019, 840 children died from neglect. Just neglect, that's 5 childhood a day. 7.9 million abuse cases reported per year. 3.4 million of those received prevention and post-response services. So that's 4.5 million who got nothing. And I only bring this up is because where is the pandemic? Where is the outrage from our government officials? These are our children. I get it. You've got to be outraged with it. That's a lot of stuff going on that people are dying from. 12,000 died from cancer. Children died from cancer in 2019. 12,000. And we're mad and masked up over 335. We need to get our priorities straight and start helping everybody. If we're going to help these people, let's help everybody. So 877 unique victims of sex trafficking in 2019. Where's the outrage? You know what I mean? Where's the outrage? People took an oath. I'm not saying that's upon you guys. I'm just saying, where's the outrage? Okay, we got to do something about all this stuff. Okay. Institutes who use the VAERS system, since he was trying to be discredited last time, is the FDA, the CDC, and the HHS. 300,000 reported injuries from Moderna alone. 34,052 deaths. 500 from the vaccine. 546 million injuries as of 8/1/21. It's a lot. Okay, it's a lot.
Continuation of the program and the full knowledge of the ongoing harm can cause serious harm and death to both adults and children. Constitutes a crime against humanity, genocide, for which those found to be responsible or complicit will ultimately be held personally accountable. So people that are pushing all these vaccines on everybody, oh, you gotta get the vaccine, you gotta get the vaccine, eventually you're gonna become personally responsible for that. You know what I mean? Right here is a report. There was over almost 200,000 reports of people that had problems, you know. After the vaccines were available to everyone, did you lose an unvaccinated loved one due to COVID-19? If you are willing to share your family story, please DM us your contact info so we can reach out to you. There's over 80 right here in just that little bit of time, over 200,000 reports on, you know, people had problems because of the vaccine. I'm not saying, hey, you want to get vaccinated, get vaccinated. There's a lot of bad stuff in it. Don't push it on our kids, please. You know? You know, this is weeks of research, and I don't have time in 5 minutes. And you know, I appreciate you guys doing this for us. You know, I thank you for taking after our kids, but let's look after them in a lot of different ways. Because I want to tell you something. I can't get to all this stuff. It really stinks that I can't. But you know what? That's all right. We're being pushed. So the immune system. The immune system. Let me find out where it is here. Tell you something, wherever I found this stuff here. I got too much paperwork here. It's just too much for us parents to have to go through to protect our children. Because what it does, see, I'll just go off the top of my head. The immune system, okay, is all about how you breathe and stuff. The best way to have a safe and healthy immune system is deep breaths. It's to get the oxygen in the blood to flow equally and throughout the body. When you mask up and you put different CO2s and you're mixing your stuff and your heart rate's going up and stuff, it actually compromises the immune system. Maybe not right off, but kids being masked 6, 7, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, it's going to take a toll on them. Who's going to be responsible for that when that comes down the line? You know, who's going to be responsible for hurting my child's immune system? You know what I mean? It's just stuff I want you guys to think about. You know what I mean? I just want you to think about. You know what I mean? You know, it says, the legal issue, failing to follow a health order
Mr.
cannot...
Johns, we're at 5 minutes.
We're at 5 minutes already? So that's it, I'm done?
Yes. Thank you.
You wonder why people get upset is because you're just limiting us to this. You're limiting us to our health of our kids. You know, where's the educators here? You guys are supposed to be educators, educating our children. You're going to watch them suffer?
Next speaker, please.
Ridiculous.
Okay, can you not start it? Just wait. I'm going to get my own phone out. Okay. Hi. There we go. Okay.
And
So my
please
name
do-
is Catherine from Green, 3 kids in the school system, and this one, of course. So first off, am I allowed to ask how many board members have children in the actual school system? Is that a question that us parents can know?
No, and as we discussed, sorry about that, as I read through the public participation, it's more of a your comments, your questions, it's not a back and forth sort of discussion kind of thing at this point.
No worries, it's okay. So then my next question is, I had reached out to the superintendent to try and get a little bit more information about the pool testing just to see if I could understand it correctly, mostly because I have other parents that have reached out that their children are quarantined, healthy children, just because they were a close contact of someone that was tested positive. So I wanted to just see what pool testing was about a little bit more, because I'll admit I didn't look into it enough over the summer. I quite frankly don't remember taking the survey either. So she had stated that all of the children that are enrolled in pool testing, as long as they're enrolled in pool testing, would not have to quarantine if there was, let's say, a positive case. Even if there was a positive case, the kids that are enrolled would not have to quarantine. So I wondered what the difference was in regards to parents whose kids are quarantined at the present moment. We heard about all the different schools. Why a negative test for them isn't the same as a negative test if they're enrolled in the pool testing. I asked that of a CDC worker today. Her name's Kelsey. She also didn't understand the correlation, why one would be trusted and one wouldn't be trusted. They are all, after all, just COVID tests, and it's either negative or it's not. Another word that she used was, well, the kids enrolled in pool testing are surveillanced. They are tested once a week. So that is the reason they figured they could catch it better. But we also know that a negative is not 100% negative, right? Because there's false negatives. So then you have child A that was tested on Monday and gets to stay in school because child B had COVID, they go home, they stay. So all of the enrolled kids now stay that whole week. Child A has COVID week 2. That child was just in there. So you're kind of calling it the same thing with your, as long as they're enrolled in pool testing, they can stay in school. That does not sound a little bit like force and coercion? So now I have to say, hey, sweethearts, you guys have to get a test done without me present, right? I'm the only one that ever takes them to the doctor. Not even their own dad is taking them to the doctor. That's me. Now they have to go to school where they're supposed to be getting an education, and then they're having the school worry about their health. That's not your job. I understand you want to help the community, but in our community, the cases have not. Turner, Leeds, and Green have not been crazy high. They're not overrun. You might have heard of a person or a person who had COVID, but it's not completely prevalent, right? We have some quarantines, and how many of the quarantines are actually kids that are positive or kids that were just considered a close contact? Because not all of the schools are big enough to adhere to the 3-foot rule. Then, are we also asking our educators, the people that are working in classrooms that are trying to teach our children, now they're having to be monitors. Adjust your mask, fix your mask. That would be a demerit. How many demerits until you get attention? 3. Our children are supposed to be learning. They're not supposed to be worrying about where their mask is on their face or if they need to take a drink of water. Yes, my daughter reported that this morning. I'll try and find out who that parent is of that child who had that happen, because my child is there to learn, not for everyone else to be monitoring how close she gets to another child. I think it was 15 minutes. Yep, that kid right there, definitely 15 minutes. They definitely touched. Teachers, go back to teaching. Okay, teach. I did it in a classroom, and I could not at the end of the day tell you which 2 students touched for 15 minutes or within that 3 feet for those 15 minutes total in one spot or consecutive throughout the day. Let's get back to why educators are in the classroom, and that's to teach. And please, for the parents that are thinking about enrolling or have already enrolled your child into pool testing, please realize that that is a slippery slope. The other thing that the CDS workers said was that on the horizon, within the next year, she said, that they were going to start unmasking us because they asked where the line was for the masking. It's when 95% of the student and staff population are vaccinated. That is the line that we're going to get to the end to be able to unmask ourselves, is 95% COVID vaccination. And if you think that doesn't come with a mandate, you're wrong. Business. And then I'll sign your board. Thanks.
Thank you. And I am certain that as we get into implementation on pool testing, that Superintendent Grant will share additional details and a refresher on what that looks like.
Sorry, there's not a pen up here.
Hey everybody, my name is Christine Duplessis and I went to school here, as well as I have a 15-year-old son and a 15-year-old stepson at Levitt. I came to the last board meeting. I just kind of listened and supported my fellow parents. It's very, very concerning to me that we have a board here that I don't feel like even listen to opposing views. You know, for instance, last time I was here, there was a lady that was on her phone nodding off I felt very disrespected in that
No,
aspect.
we're definitely not going to address any attacks at any, whether it's anyone in the audience, anyone on the board.
When do
If
we
you
get to
wish
do that?
to, we don't get to attack other people.
Well, no,
board
I
members or
wanted to
otherwise.
address my concerns about a board member that we
Absolutely.
elected in, and I don't feel like we get to do that. When is the appropriate time to do that?
I think you've been fairly clear about your concern at this point. There's no need to belabor that particular issue.
Okay, I'll email you
If you
guys
have
later about
other
it, no problem, we'll move on.
Concerns?
I'm gonna read just some info about the face masks. They pose serious risk to healthy people. Dr. Russell Baylock warns that not only do face masks fail to protect the healthy from getting sick, but they also create serious health risks to the wearer. The bottom line is, if you are not sick, you should not be wearing a face mask. As businesses reopen, many are requiring shoppers and employees to wear face masks. Costco, for instance, will not allow shoppers in the store without wearing a face mask. Many employers are requiring all employees to wear a face mask while at work. And in some jurisdictions, New York, all citizens must wear a face mask if they're outside of their own home. With the advent of the so-called COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen a number of medical practices that have little or no scientific support as regards reducing the spread of this infection. One of these measures is wearing of the facial mask, either a surgical type mask, bandana, or N95 respirator mask. When this pandemic began, we knew little about the virus itself or its I can't even say it right now, but its behavior. It was assumed that it would behave in terms of spreading among communities like other respiratory viruses. Little has presented itself after intense study of this virus and its behavior to change this perception. This is somewhat of an unusual virus, and for the vast majority of people infected by the virus, one experiences either no illness, asymptomatic, or very little sickness. My 15-year-old stepson got this, and the only reason it tipped off that he might have had it was because his nose was burning. So he went in, got a test, he was positive. The only negative effects he still has is he does not have full taste and smell. This isn't, he didn't keel over, we weren't in the ER, we weren't on ventilators. I just think you guys hear, the worst stories of these things happening, but this is like a 99 point something survival rate. It changes all the time, so I'm not gonna quote specific, numbers, because just like the CDC told us masks worse, then they said they didn't, then they said to wear, a pair of underwear on your face. That was better than nothing. So I won't, go on that. But as for scientific support of the use of the face mask, a recent careful examination of the literature in which 17 of the best studies were analyzed concluded that none of the studies established a conclusive relationship between mask, respirator use, and protection against influenza infection. Keep in mind, no studies have been done to demonstrate that either a cloth mask or the N95 mask has any effect on the transmission of COVID-19 virus. Any recommendations, therefore, have to be based on studies of influenza virus transmission. And as you have seen, there is no conclusive evidence of their efficiency in controlling flu virus transmission. Done.
Next, please.
My name is Crystal Nicholas of Green. I have a request. I am politely requesting a hard copy of a policy handbook for all of the schools in MSAD 52, Turner Primary, Turner Elementary, Green Central School, Leeds Central, Turner Middle School, and Levitt Area High School. I am requesting that these materials be sent to me within 7 working days. If you cannot provide these materials, they will be requested by a registered legal letter. If you still fail to provide these documents, I will need a written response that you were unable to provide these documents. I have sent you this request by email with my address. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, Mariah Rink. I have 4 children, 2 of them are in Turner schools, and I just wanted to show my appreciation for all that the school has been doing to take safety mitigations to prevent our community from having a huge impact. I know other parts of the country have not taken those same measures, and we've seen a lot of negative impacts to schools, a lot of kids not being able to be in school or being hospitalized, and I just want to show my appreciation. I know a lot of people show frustration, but there's a lot of people who also appreciate that safety measures are being taken so our kids can be in school. So I just wanted to express that. I won't take up much time because you have a very long agenda.
Thank you. Are there other folks that would like to comment? If not, thank you. And as we have been doing, as questions are asked, we'll certainly have folks who have that expertise respond to those at upcoming meetings. So we'll move on to old business that we don't actually have any of. Ooh, Jessica.
So after the public comment last time, I asked a couple questions again. One of them being about the O2 crime, one of them being about what our administrators may be doing for not breaks, like if there was something written for each school or what grade level. And I think the third one was in regards to the last lady she had asked specifically about her child had a medical excuse from the math, what else can be done in place of that? Do we have any follow-up on those things?
So there was information that went out from schools to families about mask breaks. They include information about mask breaks with some other information as well. And then as far as the other than mask, my understanding is that the school is working with that family about that.
Thank you. That brings us to the consent agenda. Would entertain a motion for the list.
So moved. Second.
Carlos and Richard. All those in favor? Unanimous. That brings us to item 9.1, and 9.1 is approval for out-of-state games for all sports at Leavitt Area High School.
So moved. Second.
Carlos and Richard again. Discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. 9.2, approval of May, June, and July operating and expenditure reports.
So moved.
Second.
Carlos and Yuri. Discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Item 9.3 asks for approval of transfer of funds from regular instruction to cover over expenditures in fiscal year 21 facilities.
So moved. Second.
Carlos and Richard. Yuri.
So this is what I indicated about in my report out with the transfer of funding to cover, to prepay some of these costs that we had upcoming, to try to reduce those expenditures upcoming.
Questions and other discussion on this? And actually, I just had a quick follow-up question as well. Was there some impact? We had some sub-custodians. We were doing enough additional cleaning last year. That was something that was paid for by federal funds for a period of time, but not the entire year. Is that correct as well?
Yes, the temporary custodians were hired for the additional cleaning last year. Federal emergency relief funds paid for them through December, but we made the decision to keep them on so they would continue with that cleaning for the rest of the year. So that was a cost.
Thank you. Other discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. 9.4, selection of Patients Norman Committee. This committee is generally comprised of one member from each town, correct? And then after the committee meets and reviews applications submitted for the $5,000 Patients Norman Prize for Teaching Excellence, the superintendent and myself had the opportunity to review them as well, and we have the great good fortune to award that right around Christmas, which is nice timing for folks. Historically, this has been kind of a volunteer sort of thing. Richard is raising his hand as if he would volunteer. Richard, Carlos. So we have Turner, we have leads, we need Green. Yuri? So we have Carlos, Richard, and Yuri. That was very efficient. Thank you. We'll look forward to that. That's always quite a treat to read those applications. That brings us to 9.5, first and second reading and adoption of policy BED, remote participation in school board meetings. Carlos and Richard. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. 9.6, election of board members for Maine School Board Association delegate and alternative delegate. And as a reminder to folks, this will be the individual who attends the Maine School Boards Association meeting and delegate session where they may weigh in on the items we're going to discuss in 9.7, proposed resolutions. And this has also been kind of a volunteer-ish sort of thing. Richard, are you raising your hand again?
No.
Well, fine then. Clearly, Richard has had an incredibly positive experience serving as the delegate to this particular.
Until it went virtual, and then I was totally unimpressed and totally bored. In fact, I didn't watch much of it.
Tell us how you really
I do
feel.
not feel that that's my responsibility anymore.
You are ceding that to another interested party, I think.
Absolutely.
Yes, that was a very good sales pitch. Who else would be interested in that?
Is it virtual again?
Yes.
Who hasn't done it yet?
So I feel like a game of rock, paper, scissors is going to break out here. I will say that the conference is very helpful. There's generally a lot of really useful information. I know it's like most things that are a lot more challenging in a virtual setting than in person. So, Yuri?
Do we know is it live or can you view it after work?
That's an excellent question.
I believe it must be live because there has to be voting.
Oh, for the delegate assembly. Yes, the sessions may be viewed at other times, but the delegate assembly where the voting actually happens. And then the resolutions and the voting by the delegates is simply to assign the body's sort of seal of approval or not on these various resolutions that then MSBA takes to hopefully grow up and be legislation or direction for the legislature as well.
If our newest members don't want to do it, then I would take one spot. But I don't mind. Put it up to them first. I can be that person.
You're interested in that, Crystal?
Sure.
Thank you, ladies.
And just in case anything were to prevent Crystal from attending that, we do generally have an alternate delegate just in case as well. Excellent. Thanks, Jill. So Jill will serve as the alternate delegate. And whether you're a delegate or not delegate, I mean, as I said, the sessions are pretty interesting. And I do think, Teresa, you refresh me if I'm wrong, that we have had the ability to view those at other times in the virtual setting.
I do not know.
Okay.
I do know that, yes. Yes, what happens is they're live, and then you have access to them.
For a period of time.
For that for a certain period of time.
Okay, thank you. Teresa?
I had a question as to whether or not, and this is for you, Betsy, and then maybe for Kim, if we need a motion or if this is similar to the discussion on the committee appropriations forum.
No, I think this one, since we're referring to it as election, I think probably we would be well served to have a motion that reflected that Crystal would be our delegate and Jill would be our alternate delegate. Yuri and Richard. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you, folks. And we'll have details around that usually come out as we get closer to that meeting. That brings us to 9.7, discussion of the 2021 proposed resolutions by the MSBA Delegate Assembly. And I am thinking that I did something extremely exciting, like read through these the last time. Does that sound vaguely familiar? as is? Fantastic. No, that's fine. So, the proposed resolutions, my arms are long enough to get this far away. New proposed, these appear to be revisions to existing kind of policy proclamations. The first one is around student absenteeism. The Maine School Boards Association supports the Department of Education's goal of having all students be in attendance at least 95% of their academic year. This goal can only be achieved if there are interventions and supports for those students who are too often absent. Communication with parents, guardians around chronic absenteeism is critical, as are school-based supports such as mentoring, counseling, and tutoring. Alternative programs for at-risk students, either on a local or regional level, should be supported. Should efforts not be successful through traditional communication with parents, guardians, MSBA urges proactive efforts for communication and supports through DHHS and other local or state agencies. So typically what the board will do is kind of discuss these and give our delegate and alternate delegate kind of a sense of where the board would be on that. Kim, do you have some sense on these as well as to what this proposed suggestion is to replace existing guidance around absenteeism?
So I think that student absenteeism is always a large concern, absolutely. And schools we have board policy in place to support school action, and schools are reaching out to students and families who are absent, because we know that is going to greatly impact the learning. As far as the wording's a little bit different, the one thing that I thought was interesting about the proposed is a little further than halfway down, where it says alternative programs for at-risk students, either on a local or regional level, also should be supported. And so I'm not sure if there are other plans in place for that or not, but it's just wording that I noticed, especially since there was a change later on that we'll see about taking the word around alternative programming out. So I think anything that says we're going to do everything we can around absenteeism is a positive thing.
Thank you. Other board members with either questions or thoughts around this? Richard?
Kim, do we currently have a percentage? This 95%
Yeah.
sounds awfully high.
It is high, Richard. We've had different percentages over the years, and we can get that for the next board meeting, if you'd like to see what those percentages are.
Other discussion? Gosh, I was close to the microphone there. It sounds on the surface that this seems quite positive. I think a lot of times it seems like discussion in that delegate assembly is an opportunity to ask questions, like the point that Kim brought up around alternative programs. Is there a sense that there would be support, or there is support for programs of some sort, that's why that's embedded in this? Might be a point to bring up. We have not typically taken specific votes per se on each of the resolutions. Teresa, do you remember? It's more of a general.
I'll check back to last year to see if I can find it. I think what you're alluding to is that you just discuss it and then give it to the delegate. Richard, I don't know.
Yes.
Is that what you remember? Because I remember you taking notes and then moving from there. So I think that's probably enough, unless Kim says we should do something different.
No, I think that's exactly it.
And at this point, I guess from the head nodding and not particularly loud questions around, is this an appropriate one? It sounds like the board is supportive of this, but certainly always the questions are good around that. Yuri?
I would be cautious of, I think that there's already an absenteeism policy in place. I would be very curious to know if this is leaning on the alternative programming, or if this is truly just to reinforce and to enhance the absenteeism policy. Because I would be concerned if this was looking to pass responsibility of the district for alternative programming.
and maybe it helps that the wording that this is proposed to replace is the Maine School Boards Association encourages local school boards to examine in detail the rates of absenteeism among teachers and students in order to enable them to consider the implications that findings may have for board policy. Strangely enough, if it's in gray and then struck through, it's rather difficult to read. So it sounds like definitely a question around the alternative programs would be a handy one to ask in that session. So the second proposal is around additional verbiage in the resolution that exists around school board training. That additional verbiage is possible areas of discussions include equity in education, FOAA, explanation of MSBA services, board governance, local committees' purpose and structure, board leadership training, and other items of interest and concern within local school boards. Thoughts on this one? It appears from, and all board members do have these proposed resolutions. The previous resolution was simply the Maine School Boards Association is committed to sharing and expanding training opportunities, utilizing in part a regional approach and tapping local board members and others as trainers. MSBA encourages local boards to adopt policies that incorporate the local board's commitment to the education of its board members and reflect its need to annually budget the funds necessary to fulfill this important responsibility. Clearly, the proposed wording simply adds more specificity to this. Does that seem? Richard?
Can I ask a dumb question? What's FOAA?
Freedom of Access Act.
Thank you.
There are no dumb questions. I guess I would be interested in why the additional specificity around that. It seems, I mean, none of these aren't, some years there are resolutions that have to do with moving towards some piece of legislation. This sounds like a communication piece with MSBA and districts, but Richard?
I'm guessing that they're responding to complaints from board members that they aren't being adequately trained to take their jobs. And this is an attempt to broaden that.
Entirely possible. Any other thoughts on this one? Whether folks feel like this is useful wording or whether it's not so much. Yuri?
I would feel like it's not advantageous to the district. I think the district certainly has training opportunities for the school board, and if the district thought we needed more or had some recommendations, I think that we should have the ability to do so. I'm not sure if we gain anything by adopting this.
Yeah, I'm sensing some kind of lukewarm at best feelings around this. I'm not sure exactly what it gains.
I like the suggestions of things, but
Right.
we can figure that out probably on our own.
Absolutely. Thank you. The next one is an addition in an existing resolution. Curriculum policy. School boards are legally responsible for adopting policies with respect to curriculum. Therefore, the Maine School Boards Association urges local school boards to recognize that it is imperative they develop and implement curriculum policies that reflect the best interests of students and the community. The suggested addition in highlighted and include in-person, remote, and regional collaborative learning opportunities. That it's only one partial sentence for an addition on this one. Does that seem like a reasonable sort of addition on that? Kim, did you have anything on, and just holler at me if I...
Sorry, I hear policy and I assume Teresa was going to speak up. So what I would say is that when I think in terms of the regional collaborative learning opportunities, I think of course of LRTC, which we do, and I think of the Region 9 with the truck driving license that students can. So I think that those kinds of opportunities are always good, and we always have our eye to what others we might be able to do as well. In person, of course, we've got that going on, and then remote is the one that's a little bit trickier as far as what they mean by that.
So that would be a good thing to bring up in the discussion, certainly what folks are thinking around that remote inclusion there. Our next, and this has lots of letters and numbers, 2B, I1 something, and that this is a revision to an existing piece that addresses alternative programs. The suggestion is remove alternative programs resolution and replace with multiple pathways, and this is, as Superintendent Brandt alluded to in the earlier resolution. The Maine School Boards Association urges local school boards to approve educational programs that interest, engage, and motivate each student to realize their potential and result in successful completion of their high school experience while equipping them with a high school diploma or equivalency. Either Kim or Teresa, would you like to?
I don't mind taking this one. Can you hear me without a microphone? Okay.
Thank you.
This is something our Dropout Prevention Committee has started talking about. We were able to meet last year, and actually our student member had some interesting ideas, and I know Resignations and Joanne are on that committee as well as Ryan Patry. And I would say that this also fits with our strategic plan, and that we are looking for ways to engage and motivate students. And I think we have work to do, but I think we have some engaged and informed people on the committee that have some great ideas. And while it's a Dropout Prevention Committee, I think our core belief is how to connect students to school. So I would say that I think that that's something that we're doing, and personally, I like the multiple pathways rather than alternative programs, but that's just a personal preference.
That's the
Yeah.
So this also puts to mind goals in the strategic plan as well, about the importance of additional opportunities for hands-on experiential type learning with the goal of engaging students. So I do think that this, I agree with Teresa, that I do think that this makes a lot of sense.
Any questions or concerns from board members?
No.
Seems like folks are in support of that concept then. Our next one is a proposed replacement to around teacher evaluation. The Maine School Boards Association urges local school boards to develop a comprehensive teacher evaluation policy designed to measure and improve the effectiveness of instruction on a continuous basis. Feedback is critical for all educators, regardless of where they are at in their career. Evaluation systems need to be based on high-performance standards and supported by ongoing professional development and mentorship. The process should address all aspects of teaching performance and recognize the fulfillment of student needs is of primary importance. Who
I
wants-
can take this one if you'd like.
Thank you.
We have a teacher evaluation steering committee, and we have an approved state plan. We also know through legislation that we're looking at how to make sure that we provide feedback to our teachers. I would say in our district, we utilize the Charlotte Danielson model, but I really applaud the committee for recognizing that those on a teaching contract need varied rubrics or varied means to judge their performance, and we were able to create rubrics for librarians, nurses, school counselors and social workers, as well as teachers and instructional coaches. So we have a variety, and I know that one thing the administrative team has talked about recently is how we can get better at giving feedback, and we are looking at a model to add to our absence management system, which would help us do that. So I feel that at least in our district, it is something that we are aware of. I am going to get the steering committee back together to make sure that what we have in place is where we need it, and to move forward in our work to support teachers and others on a teaching contract.
Kim, did you have thoughts on this? It appears that the replacement is quite a bit less lengthy and prescriptive than what existed previously as far as a resolution from that body is concerned.
Betsy?
Joanne?
Before this one, I think my problem would be, it says urges local school boards to develop a comprehensive. I don't think school boards are qualified to develop teacher evaluation plans, maybe approve them, but not develop them.
Either Kim or Teresa, do you have thoughts around that? And I'm just trying to scan the existing.
Yeah, so I would say we've had an evaluation system in place, and Teresa, you may have just said this exact same thing, for several years now. So we do have a plan in place. There have been some need to get the committee, the steering committee back together related to the pandemic and some changes during this time, as well as a statute around who needs to be evaluated during the pandemic. However, we have a system firmly in place that we have been using for years. So we don't, it's not like we're starting from scratch and we don't know what to do. We've got the Charlotte Danielson model that we're using.
So Joanne, if I'm understanding your concern that you're indicating is more around the indication in here is that it's urging local school boards to develop the comprehensive teacher evaluation policy versus the previous wording talked about recognizing the importance and policies around that versus encouraging the local board to develop a comprehensive teacher evaluation policy. Is that accurate? So I think that's certainly sounds like an important distinction to bring up in the discussion around that. Is that the intent that the board would be taking a more active role in that than necessarily has happened in the past?
That's the revised or the old one. It actually says the same thing. In that second paragraph, that first line, teacher evaluation and compensation, it's almost the same wording.
So you don't feel like that this is urging a different direction or a different level of involvement than the previous was?
Right, I agree with Joanne's sentiment that we should not be developing them, but it looks like it's the same language regardless.
Okay. So still, certainly a question to ask, but I guess I'm not hearing, no, this sounds terrible necessarily, especially if it's a more efficient wording than previously existed. Our next one is adding the underlined portion to the current resolution, administrator shortage, is 3A3. The Maine School Boards Association recognizes the significant decline in the number of qualified candidates for administrative positions at all levels, but particularly in the areas of school superintendency and the high school principalship. MSVA believes that the urgency of this matter should be addressed jointly by the Department of Education, the State Board of Education, the University of Maine system, and other higher education institutions in the Maine legislature. The additional component that is being suggested, it also recommends the support and reestablishment of leadership academies, and leadership and academy are both capitalized, so these are special things to enhance this effort, or perhaps even these F words. Anyone have strong feelings on this one? Richard?
So, Kim, there were leadership academies in the past, and they were discontinued, is that correct?
So at one point, several years ago, for example, Lewiston had a leadership academy, and it was a purposeful professional development experience for aspiring leaders. So teachers could be part of that, and it could be for administrators specifically. I don't know if Lewiston still does an academy or not, but I do know that as part of the Regional Service Center, that was a discussion about something that we might want to consider on the list to discuss at some point in the future.
Anyone have any strong feelings on this sentiment?
I think it sounds like something we should be doing.
Lots of head nodding. Thank you. 3B, 3E, funding of services to students with severe disabilities. Maine School Boards Association strongly urges the Commissioner of Education, the State Board of Education, and other commissioners in the Children's Cabinet to, and the suggested change is cross out the develop A and replace it with maintain the mechanism for increased financial assistance to schools faced with high costs for students with severe disabilities and or students who may need out-of-district placements. There's additional verbiage, but that gets at the meat of it. Any thoughts around that? Seems.
It sounds to me like they're trying to force the legislature to pay attention.
To maintain an adjustment that exists currently. Let's see. It appears that there are a couple other suggested strikeouts. Regional service centers no longer required. Purpose for resolution has been removed due to changes in legislation. That one certainly seems fairly straightforward. Binding interest arbitration / right to strike is being replaced by 2 separate resolutions. And these are new ones. Am I reading this right? Kim, correct me if I'm getting, oh, here we are, new revised proposed 2021. I probably just walked you through stuff that we don't even really. Learning loss. Concern about learning loss due to summer vacation or the disruption caused by the pandemic is discussed but seldom quantified. The Maine School Boards Association believes that a student-centered approach, which looks at individual academic achievement and informs what support systems are needed and for whom, is a more effective approach. The Department of Education needs to be involved with this work in terms of developing appropriate measurement tools and sharing effective interventions developed by their curriculum experts with consideration of appropriate funding. That was loud, sorry. Kim or Teresa, thoughts around this one?
So I think that our schools are working hard to assess where students are, skills and content knowledge, and putting all kinds of interventions in place. So our goal is to accelerate the learning at this point, meet students where they are, and continue working forward. Of course, I love the idea of the Department of Education also doing an active role in supporting us with options around the more the better, as far as I'm concerned, as far as possible interventions that can be implemented.
Any thoughts from board members on this one? The rationale seems to include primarily that this work also needs support from the Department of Education. Head nodding on this one.
Go for it.
Excellent. The next one is dropout prevention. The Maine School Boards Association supports the Department of Education's goal of a 90% or better graduation rate. MSBA recognizes there are many factors that can lead to a student dropping out of school. There needs to be early interventions for at-risk students and support both at the state and local level for multiple pathways, such as adult education, to earn a diploma. This is an imperative not only for our students, but for our society, which needs an educated and engaged workforce and citizenry. MSBA additionally and proactively urges MDOE and U.S. Education Department to redefine high school dropouts so that high school graduates are inclusive of students who attain that achievement within 6 years of initiating grade 9, including those that have utilized an alternative pathway within the 6-year timeline, also be considered a high school graduate. Either Kim or Teresa want to weigh in on this?
I would say Evan has a feeling.
That's not just one, but 2 thumbs up.
Yes.
Excellent. Board members, questions, thoughts?
Support.
Support. Yuri?
So what is the requirement on the district for the alternative education? Will that be above and beyond what we have now, or is that just to allot a longer period of time for somebody to make that achievement?
You're looking at me.
Who wants to?
I wasn't.
Yeah. Evan, if you have thoughts around what that.
Just from I haven't read it, but just from me reading it, it sounds like it's more about the
So what you're saying is this is more of a, how do we classify those students, not a, we need to add more coursework or whatever else? Yes?
Can I just clarify something? They don't count as a dropout after 4 years, they're a non-completer. They still can be a completer after 5 or 6 years, but they're not on the completers list after 4.
So the hope would be that this would change how we're defining.
Thank you, Jason.
Questions from board members on this? That's Yuri.
I certainly would agree with Evan's sentiment on giving students the opportunity to have a little bit of an extended period of time to complete that. I would just be cautious that is that going to require the district to provide some sort of alternative education program that doesn't already exist today.
So definitely a concern to bring up in the discussion as well. Next, binding arbitration. The Maine School Boards Association opposes any legislation that would allow binding arbitration on salaries, pensions, and insurance because the fiscal impact of these significant cost drivers in the school budget should be decided by locally elected school boards, not outside arbitrators who have no stake in the community. Thoughts? Kim's picking up her microphone.
Well, I think that this is important. I think it's important because boards are elected to represent their communities and make decisions related to finances for the district. And the idea of an arbitrator that is not part of the district to make a decision that would then have great impact on what the budget would look like and what it would mean for taxpayers, I don't think that's a good idea.
Board members have thoughts on this?
Support it.
Seeing head nodding that yes, that makes sense. Be supportive of that. The next one is right to strike. The Maine School Boards Association opposes any legislation that would give school personnel the right to strike. Strikes severely disrupt the education of children and the lives of their families. Even a short strike could upend an academic year, breaking educational continuity, those are two separate words, for students and throwing off school calendars for instruction and in-school and after-school activities. Strikes also could put our students at risk if they are in unsupervised settings at school or at home.
Doesn't the current law say that teachers can't strike?
Correct.
Correct.
So this is
support.
simply a reinforcement of the current policy.
Correct. Kim, did you want to weigh in on this one?
Well, yes, if I could, Betsy, go back to a second binding arbitration. I thought it might be important for everyone to remember that the LD 677 was an act to improve public sector labor relations by amending the laws governing arbitration under certain public employees' labor relations law, and that bill was dead, but it was a bill that was proposed. So some of these resolutions are related to bills that have been proposed.
So I'm sensing from board members that folks would be supportive of that particular resolution.
Yes.
And I think that's it. So hopefully that gives Crystal and Jill enough clarity around what might be questions our board has on those and where our board is and our superintendent and folks are thinking on these as well. Our remaining items are executive sessions, unless there are any other items of business that we need to take up. If there are not, I would entertain a motion for an executive session to discuss adult education non-contracted employee salaries pursuant to 1 MRSA. And just as a note, the additional executive sessions are to discuss the TTEA support staff negotiations and to discuss the duties of officials, appointees, employees as we move along through.
Second.
And Carlos and Richard have made a motion for 9.8. All those in favor?